I was in London. I was dating finally my beautiful wife, and Mike Nichols was performing. He was not directing, he was performing in a play by Wally Shawn called The Designated Mourner in England, and invited me to see the play and have dinner with him afterwards. In the book I talk about representing Nichols and May to this day. I still do, on their tapes and film clips, etc. So I went to dinner, and at the dinner, Mike said, "I've invited F. Murray Abraham. Do you know him?" I said, "I know who he is. I loved him in the Ritz 100 years ago." And, yeah, he said, "I'd like you to meet him." And he brought Kate, his wife, Murray did, and we had a wonderful time. And we became real friends. And it's been a long time. It's been 20, 30, oh, God knows how many years. But we've, as you heard, we did a play together. And now Lila and Murray and I are hopefully going to be doing a play in the fall about Norman Mailer, where Murray will be playing Norman Mailer, and Lila will have the female lead, and it's a three-hander and rather an interesting play. I hope that the pandemic calms down a little bit so we can put that on without so much aggravation as we've had. So Murray, of course, being a great Shakespearean actor, I asked him if he would read my only connection with Shakespeare, so to speak.
An American convention is held yearly called NATPE, the National Association of Television Program Executives. Castle Hill would attend religiously along with buyers and sellers of films from all over the world. We would either take a suite in the main hotel where it was happening, or have a booth on the convention floor. In 1991 in LA, two men walked into the Castle Hill suite without an appointment. They said they represented an unreleased film that Orson Welles had starred in and directed. I asked if it was Chimes at Midnight, which I knew hadn't been seen for years. They said no, and added that this one had been in storage for almost 40 years. I said I could be interested in distributing it. Welles was a great filmmaker, but had directed very few films. They then added that all of the worldwide rights were available. I asked what the name of the film was. They refused to tell me. Then left the suite, promising that they'd be in touch. I was disappointed, but since neither of them were in the film business, I had no idea if this was real. And by the way, if they had been in the film business, I almost certainly would have felt the same way, but at least I could have checked them out. All I knew was that they were lawyers who would be returning to their hometown, Chicago, right after our meeting. Our company was somewhat unique. We represented the films of some of the great film directors, towering talent like Alfred Hitchcock, Elia Kazan, John Ford, Ernest Lubitsch. Wow.
Those were the days.
Few independent film distributors had those kinds of names. With us, an Orson Welles film would be in good company. I wanted badly to represent a Welles film, but I wondered, was any of this real? Why couldn't they tell me the title? Were they meeting with other distributors? A week went by. No news. 2 weeks, nothing. By the third week, it was looking bad, and after a month, I gave up hope. Then one day, I was told I had a phone call from a Miss Welles. I didn't know who she was, but I took the call anyway. She explained that she was Orson Welles' daughter and would be in New York City the following week and wanted to meet. We set up an appointment. I was prepared to greet what I envisioned to be an older woman who, considering her father's girth, would be, well, plump. Remember, there was no Google to check people out in those days. She came into my office a tall, willowy young blonde who reminded me of a model. In fact, it turned out she was a model. Beatrice was the youngest daughter of Orson Welles and an Italian countess. She lived in Las Vegas and was the founder of a cosmetic line and a designer of jewelry. She had been directed to me by the two attorneys that I had met at NATP. She told me the film was Othello. I knew Welles had made Macbeth and his version of Falstaff, Chimes at Midnight. I didn't know of Othello. The film was in black and white, and Welles played the lead. Though there was a full cast, I didn't recognize the other names. I learned that there were two men in Chicago, Michael Dawson and Arnie Sachs, who were working on the restoration of the film. Edward Stone and Don Leibsker, the Chicago attorneys, were the restoration's executive producers, and the entire score was in the process of being re-recorded. Welles had started making the film in Italy 3 years after World War II. And when it ended, when sound recording was sadly inferior to the industry, so up-to-date equipment would be necessary, these 40 years later, he had taken Welles 4 years to complete the film. He kept running out of money and had to use his salary as an actor from The Third Man and The Prince of Foxes to continue shooting and editing. When the restoration was complete, the film was sent to me to screen in New York. It was a fine film with an excellent new score, recreated note for note. Sadly, however, it was often out of sync. In some parts, the actors' lips moved, but dialogue would not be heard. Beatrice and I had dinner afterwards, and I said, "This cannot be shown in its present form. We need to record an entire new sound mix, and the film must be put in sync." Beatrice agreed. Now came the task of finding a top sound mixer. Lee Dichter is one of the best sound mixers I know. He has worked with the top New York film directors, Mike Nichols, Robert Benton, Woody Allen, Nora Ephron, to name a few. I called him to ask if he could look at Othello, but he stopped me cold and said, "I'm totally booked for over a year." Knowing his high professional acumen, I had an idea. I asked whether he would at least look at the first reel, give me some advice. Reluctantly, he said he would, and on the given date, we screened the reel. The first few minutes of Othello are breathtaking. There is no dialogue, but the photography is unbelievable. Incredible visuals of a funeral procession with Welles as a corpse being carried on wooden wheels, a man in a cage being pulled up the side of a huge castle, and operatic voices, plus a full orchestra accompanied all these magnificent images. Lee is an artist. I knew he would be in awe of what he saw on the screen, and sure enough, he turned to me and said, "You son of a bitch. I have to do this film, but I can only work weekends and some weekdays for a few hours after 6 p.m. I thanked him. I was relieved, ecstatic. My plan had worked. It took many months to complete the movie. Our enhanced version of the film was accepted at the Cannes Film Festival. In 1952, it had won the grand prize at the festival in 1992. We played out of competition at the Palais. As I described earlier, we walked the red carpet. It was a great send-off for the film, and Welles's genius was redeemed. It was only a highlight of my professional, it was truly a highlight of my professional life. That evening, after the screening, we had a party nearby to celebrate. And the actress Emma Thompson made it a point to find me and let me know how grateful she was for what we had done. She had just come to the party to tell me that, and she left immediately afterward. I'm still touched when I think of her kind gesture, and remember what our work can mean to the people within our industry. After doing some research, I was able to find out some of the film's history. Despite winning the Grand Prix in Cannes, no distributor in the United States had wanted the film. 3 years had gone by. Then in '55, United Artists had agreed to open the film in New York City only. It played at the Paris Theater and did no business. Despondent, Wills had put the negative in storage, where it had languished until Beatrice, the Chicago Gang, and Castle Hill brought it back to the world. Beatrice did many interviews and was a big plus in getting us publicity. One day she called me, upset. She told me she'd had an interview with the largest paper in Las Vegas, and they'd written about her childhood, her parents, and her company. Well, why are you so unhappy? I asked. It sounds like a fine article. The last line. It's not what I said, she told me. Regarding interviews, I was used to hearing that sentence coming from many people's lips, including my own. So I asked, what exactly is the last line that the reporter wrote? She quoted me as saying, she's most excited about the new release of her father's film, A Fellow.
That's Las Vegas for you.
The last line in that chapter is, hard to top that.
Great. Nice.
Well, thank you all for listening. I hope you'll read some more chapters. My company was called Castle Hill because Schlossberg translates to castle. Schloss is a castle, and Berg is generally a mountain. But I figured Paramount had the mountain already, and I wasn't going to start a company with them. I went to a hill. That's how it became Castle Hill. Thank you appreciate it so much, and thank you all for coming.
I love this man's acting. I am very excited to be interviewing F. Murray Abraham. What are you doing now? Where can we see you?
I'm working on a play with Julian Schlossberg. We're going to do something about Norman Mailer in about a month.
Really?
Yeah. It was written by his son.
Stephen? Buffalo? Okay.
Buffalo Mailer. And we'll do it in about a month. And cross your fingers.
I will. I actually was good friends with one of his wives, Beverly Bentley. Can we see you in film or TV as well right now?
Well, there are a lot of my old films around, and I'm going to be shooting one in Italy about 3 months from now. And I'm going to be visiting Claudia Cardinale in about 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Talk to her about doing something.
How did you first meet Julian?
I was in London doing a play, and I dropped in to see Mike Nichols doing a play called The Designated Moliner. And I was backstage to say hello to Mike, because we had done a play together. And I was invited to go and have dinner at Joe Allen in London. There's a Joe Allen there, you know.
No, I didn't. I'm like, oh, wow.
And when I got there, Julian was part of the group. And when Julian had to leave to catch a plane or something, as he left, Mike said, there goes the nicest producer in show business. And it turns out that it was true. But before Julian left, within our conversation, he said, I'm going to produce a play for you. And he said, but I'm serious. I really am. And he did,
Wow.
in his own theater.
Is there a role that you've never had a chance to play that you would love to play?
Many.
Such as?
Well, I've played Lear. I want to play her again, but I would like to play an outrageous comedy. I think it's time to make people laugh again. People seem to have forgotten.
Absolutely. I agree. Laughter is the key right now.
Yeah?
And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like our audiences to know about you?
I think that it's time to stop being so angry with each other and start reaching out to each other. It's important to have causes and to fight for those causes. But if you remain angry about them, I don't know how you can accomplish anything. If you're angry about them at the beginning, you're only going to get angry. And anyhow, what I'm saying is pretty obvious. I think it's time to open up each other to each other's opinions.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.